Hello guys, Charles here and welcome back to my channel. In this video I'll be teaching you how to go from a linear scale approach like this to a more outside intervallic chromatic approach like this. Or even this. So this lesson's for anyone who liked those sounds and knows their major scales up and down the neck, but feels they still sound a bit naff, especially in jazz and fusion contexts. If you don't yet know your scales confidently, then don't worry. We discussed 3 essential methods of navigating the major scale in my major mastery video, which you can watch up here. So I know how frustrating it can be when you've gone to all the effort of getting your scales down, but you still feel musically limited by the linear approach to scales. Navigating the fretboard can be a daunting and seemingly endless task with an ever-growing list of scales and voicings. Today we'll learn an intervallic approach to begin tying all the chords, shapes and patterns of any given scale together. All of the examples in this video will be based on the major scale with some additional chromatic concepts. However, the same approach can and should be applied to the harmonic minor scale and the melodic minor scale too. And as always, these ideas should be worked on in the practice room, but should not be given a second thought when playing in live settings, unless they emerge organically. What happens in the practice room stays in the practice room. Just before we dive into today's method, let's take a moment to discuss 3 of the benefits of an intervallic approach to scales. Now firstly, taking a linear approach is an efficient route to developing confidence with the notes of a chosen scale. However, using a more intervallic approach improves our knowledge of the function of the scale in tonal contexts, and more specifically, how the notes of the scale connect to the underlying harmony. This is more relevant to how we actually use scales in improvisation or composition contexts, connecting the melody and harmony together. Secondly, by taking an intervallic approach, we can cover some of the most common chord movement vocabulary used in contemporary tonal compositions. This gives us loads of melodic vocabulary for improvisation when we inevitably encounter these exact changes or changes like them. And thirdly, most players find chromatic ideas are fun to work on, and they can increase our playing headroom and our difficulty threshold, which means that we can play the simple stuff even better at less mental cost. So the simple intervallic approach we're going to be learning is built on arpeggios and chromatic substitutions. We're going to use the 4-7-3-6-2-5-1 progression, which I believe is one of the most fruitful progressions to practice. For me, it's very much a desert island practice routine, as all 4 common chord types, the major 7, dominant 7, minor 7 and minor 7 flat 5, are all included. The 4-7-3-6-2-5-1 progression is sequenced in a functional fashion which follows the magnetic pull of music, which we know as the cycle of fifths, or its opposite, the cycle of fourths. Although the cycle of fourths or fifths is by no means the only way that diatonic harmony can function, it's certainly one of the most common movements seen in contemporary music. Our first example is a voice-led 4-7-3-6-2-5-1 chord progression through the major scale. By focusing on smooth voice leading between the chords of a scale, we're also learning how the scale shapes and arpeggios lead nicely into one another, which we began to discuss in the major mastery video. Be aware that I'm playing my 7-string guitar, so you should ignore the low B string nearest my face. So your end goal is to be able to voice lead that progression anywhere on the neck, starting on any major 7 inversion. But for this lesson, we'll focus our other examples around that specific series of chord shapes. And you'll hopefully see how that will provide a visual framework around which the other concepts can be clearly built. Now we'll take our 4-7-3-6-2-5-1 chord progression and arpeggiate it. By simply taking an arpeggiatic approach through the chord shapes learned in the first example, we can create voice-led arpeggios which resolve very effectively through the progression and towards the tonic. Next, let's move on to the fun stuff that you all came here for. We're going to experiment with some chromatic concepts. Now, you never need to play crazy outside stuff, and it's not even always stylistically appropriate to do so, but it can be great for post-bop and fusion styles in particular. As a little disclaimer, however, do make sure that the majority of your playing time is focused on the basics. The outside concepts can become very distracting, but it is fun to know and it can breed endless creativity. Firstly, let's apply a tritone substitution to every other chord. A tritone substitution means that any chord type can be replaced by the same chord type a tritone or a diminished fifth away. Notice how the tritone substitution creates descending chromatic arpeggios. Because we've already established a strong functional harmonic framework, we can begin to apply more complex chromatic concepts with the confidence that we're less likely to lose this point of reference. Finally, we'll touch upon a concept that Barry Harris calls the family of four. If we liked the sound of the tritone substitution, that tells us that we can also experiment with the remaining two dominant chords built from the same diminished family, which our original harmony and its tritone substitutions were. I'll not go into the family of four in much detail now, however, I discussed the concept in my 3 diminished decorations video, which you can watch up here. All you need to know for the purposes of this video is that if the tritone substitution sounded good, then we can also try substituting the original harmony with the same chord type a minor third above or a minor third below. I've extended these arpeggios over 2 octaves, changing the flow slightly and adding a bit of interest. Again, because the progression follows the cycle of fourths, which means it has a very strong logic behind it, and we voice out our lines well, the listener is willing to accept the function of the substituted harmony. So hopefully you've seen how powerful the 4-7-3-6-2-5-1 progression can be when combined with arpeggios and simple chromatic concepts. Now, I'm certainly not saying that this is the only way to become more confident with your scales or that it's suited for everybody. It's simply one way which I have benefited from, and so I thought I'd share it with you in the hope that some of you might find it helpful. And I'd like to add also that there is still plenty of value to be had from working on playing your linear scales as beautifully as possible. In a 2013 lesson called Hearing Scales from his internetguitarlessons.tv member site, Tim Miller stated, "You know, I don't think about scales as a technical thing actually. I always think of scales as being melodies. To me that sounds like a melody. I'm not thinking technically about it, I'm thinking musically about it." So give these exercises a go, and most importantly use these concepts to build your own lines and ideas. Remember to apply this approach to the harmonic minor and melodic minor scales too, so that you can work on diminished chords, minor major 7s and major 7 sharp 5s as well. Let me know down below if you'll be adding this approach into your routine, and share with us any other approaches or advice which you found helpful to increase your scale knowledge and confidence. Finally, please do give this video a like and subscribe, ding the notification bell, and share this information with any of your friends who you think might find it useful. I hope you're all doing very well and getting plenty of practice in, and I very much look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers.
Roll up, let me embed a story you'll never forget. A drip, drip, we're drowning in debt now. You can't buy your way out.